Travis needs just really a quick introduction. If you're familiar with a brand called Wendy's, that's where Travis works. And he is, of course, a wonderful Hope College alumni out in the real world, in the marketing space day to day. And Travis, I'm going to let you take it from there. Tell us maybe first a little bit about yourself. How did you get to where you are?
Yeah. So, hi, everybody. Some familiar faces in this, a lot of new people. Nice to meet you all. My name is Travis. Travis Martin is Timothy. Shared with you guys. I graduated from Hope in 2012, and at the time, marketing and fast food and Wendy's and places like that were like the farthest thing from my mind. When I was going to Hope, I studied poli-sci and psych. I knew I wanted to do something that involved like either learning about people and applying that in some way, whether that was in politics or whether that was through some sort of data or whether that was like going on further in psychology and being able to analyze, especially social psych. I was like, that's definitely what I want to do. But as I got closer to graduation, I realized that I didn't have any one thing that I was super passionate about. So when I was entering my senior year, I started trying to figure out, okay, how can I actually do something that is impactful, that if I don't know what I want to do for the next like 30 years, how can I make the next couple of years like as useful and beneficial to the world in general and to myself, you know, professionally and developmentally as I can. And what I ultimately elected to do was to join Teach for America. So if you're not familiar with Teach for America, they take generally recent college graduates, but you don't necessarily have to be a recent graduate. Basically give them a summer of student teaching and some like teaching courses and curriculum, and they set you loose and in areas that have a hard time finding teachers. Those could be urban areas, rural areas, a lot out on Native American reservations, to help support teachers and in some cases teach in those communities. So through Teach for America, I taught at a high school in the Detroit Public School System for 2 years and then continued to teach for another 2 years. While I was there, I got my master's in secondary education and teaching sciences from Oakland University. And during that whole time, I realized I liked teaching, but I didn't necessarily want to do it for the rest of my life. So I started thinking about how I could transition my skill sets that I was building as a teacher into a career in the business space down the road. And I started thinking again back to what I liked doing at Hope and what I liked doing as a teacher, which was learning about people. So in the teaching sense, learning about my students, figuring out what they liked, what they didn't like, what their needs were, analyzing whether it was test score data from the previous year, from previous units that we had done, and then hopefully building out, you know, unit plans and coursework that would help my students not only learn the material, but feel engaged and enjoy it as well. And the more that I looked at, the more that I realized, like, in some sense, that's kind of marketing. You're taking into account the information of your audience, and you're tailoring something to meet their needs and then presenting it back to them. And then you get the feedback from that and tool it and make it better. And that was, you know, a lot of brand management. So when I went to Michigan State, that's what I chose to focus on, was marketing and brand management. I interned between my first and second years of my MBA program with Wendy's. Absolutely loved it. Loved the director I was working for. She was excellent, and kind of told myself, like, if they give me a full-time offer, I'm definitely coming back. And that's what I ended up doing. So when I graduated in 2018, I decided to go back to Wendy's, and I've been there full-time for about 2 years now, working primarily on their breakfast and day part expansion projects.
Travis, how did you even figure out that you were going to go to Hope College?
So I grew up in the West Michigan area, so I was very familiar with Hope growing up. Didn't necessarily think that I wanted to go there. I thought it was a little bit too close to home. It was only about 25, 30 minutes from where my parents lived, from where I grew up. But my mom convinced me to take a visit, said, go sit in on a class, go, you know, tour the campus. If you like it, you know, apply. If you don't, move on, go somewhere else. I was dead set on going to either Michigan State or Michigan. That was my plan all along. And then I went there, walked the campus, sat in on a class, met with the admissions folks, and just instantly it felt like the right place. It felt like it was big enough and had the resources that I could still get a quote unquote college experience, but small enough that like I wouldn't just like run the risk of blending into the crowd and not making the most out of my time there.
Yeah, one of the great things about Hope is that it was big enough that there was a lot of fun to be had, but it was also small enough that there is a community. So that was definitely one of the things that attracted me to it as well. So here you are at Wendy's. You mentioned the fact that you would have this kind of aha moment of, oh, this is marketing, which I love. What other aha moments do you feel like you've had in the last 6 to 12 months? You've had some pretty big things going on, especially here with COVID and the way that it's impacted your industry. What are you learning?
Yeah, so the biggest project that I've been working on while at Wendy's has been what eventually morphed into the national launch of our breakfast program. Wendy's has about 6,000 restaurants across the United States, and up until the beginning of this year, only about 300 of those 6,000 restaurants serve breakfast for a number of reasons. We had tried and failed to launch breakfast in the past, and our franchisee community had kind of grown sick of it. So really, it started about probably 2 or 3 months before I started working there through the beginning of this year. We were constantly retooling and revamping our breakfast program that was in those 300 or so restaurants behind the scenes, from a menu standpoint, from a labor and service standpoint, from just a financial bottom line standpoint. And we eventually redeveloped a program that we felt like could last. We felt the bones of it were strong enough that we could put it out into the marketplace, and with the right media plan, it could really take off and explode. We launched that breakfast plan on March 2nd this year. So we had about 10 days of a normal situation in most markets before stay-at-home restrictions began and people stopped leaving the house. Obviously, restaurants and fast food depend on people being out in the marketplace and on the road, but especially breakfast. Breakfast is such a habitual thing that when all of that was clamped down, and when our media plan, which was heavily built on sporting events and on March Madness and things like that, when all of that was canceled, a lot of our plans seemed to go out the window. But one of kind of the aha moments, the things that I've learned is that, like, we didn't hit, obviously, the forecasted levels we expected to be at right now, but most of our restaurants who are serving breakfast are still profitable on that day part. So even when you clamp down all of these things, even when you take all of this away, if the underlying pillars of the business and of the project are strong, it will still find a way to succeed. Because we had to change sort of the higher level aspects of our plan, and the media aspects of our plan didn't change the fact that the overall program, the menu, the labor model that we had constructed was something that was strong enough to withstand different markets. So we're hoping once things return to a more normal sense, we can start to hit some of those peaks that we expected to. But in the time being, we're still continuing to see growth really each week for the last several weeks.
I love that positive attitude that you've kept. And I think it's really important as a marketer, where the world can be so volatile at times, to keep that positive attitude in all things. It sounds like you really love what you're doing. You're working for obviously a very well-known brand. What helps you get up on those days that are a little bit harder, where maybe it's raining outside and you're a little bit tired? What inspires you to get out of bed?
I think inspire might not be the right word, but knowing that the projects that I'm working on are going to be something that somebody looks forward to at some point in the day. As sad as it may sound, I think we've all had times where we've just been like, man, whether it's in the morning, whether it's after work, whether it's late at night coming back from the bar or whatever it might be, you're like, I am so excited to eat blank. Whether it's a ooey gooey cheesy rich thing, whether it's trying to get a healthier start to something, so you're craving a certain type of food. Knowing that the projects that I'm working on will be that for somebody someday is exciting for me. Food is something that everybody has some sort of tangible reaction to. Very few people I've ever met just go, oh, food, meh. Everybody has an opinion on it. Everybody has a reaction to it. And that's one of the things that I like working for Wendy's, but also just working in the food industry as a whole, is like, everything you do, someone can have a reaction to, because it's something that intrinsically we all understand.
Food has that emotional impact,
Absolutely.
which I so very much love as well. So tell us a little bit about where you see the industry going. I think one of the things that's really interesting about you is that you're sitting at a place where you kind of get to look across the landscape, with a brand as big as Wendy's, what are some of the trends you think we're going to see as marketers in the next 6 or 12 months?
So in the next 6 or 12 months, as we're trying to figure out what obviously the remainder of this year is going to look like from a societal standpoint and a virus related standpoint, as well as into next year. Obviously, one of the biggest things is just trying to figure out what to do if and when the virus flares up again. If restrictions have to go back in place, if things have to clamp back down, what did you learn from that, sort of March through middle May period that you can hopefully roll out more efficiently and more productively than the last time? Because really, realistically, unless you were a business that was 100% delivery centric, like all of this was new to you. So that's going to be, I think, one of the biggest challenges. I think additionally, from just a more of a societal standpoint, obviously, there's a constant pressure, to improve working conditions and wage conditions within QSR and fast food restaurants. The progressive movement within the United States to improve worker conditions is not something that is going to go away, and for good reason. So constantly making sure that your business can adjust to higher wages and higher wage rates. And that was something that when we were building the breakfast program, we definitely tried to take into account and trying to figure out if we're going to hopefully move to a spot where we're paying our workers between $12 and $15 an hour, at a starting point. How can you build that into your labor model so that businesses can still be profitable and not have to penny pinch when it comes to a wage standpoint?
Yeah. You're thinking all the way down the road, even from the very moment you start looking at the menu items, you're already planning to the long-term impact, which I think is really neat. So Travis, what tool do you feel like everyone on this Zoom call should know about that they don't know about? Is there something you found in the last year or so where you went, oh man, every marketer needs to know about this?
As far as a tool,
Or an app.
or an app. As far as tools or apps, I'm going to say that I'm woefully inadequate to answer that question outside of the tools that we use like on a day in and day out basis, some of which are, proprietary to Wendy's. So much of the data that I need to use is stuff that we have to collect internally from restaurants across the system. Since we have 6,000 restaurants that, span 230 different, DMAs and breakouts across the country, like the internal data that we're able to pull through like the point of service systems in our restaurants is awesome. So I know that's not a great answer. I'm sorry, I don't have anything.
No, data is your tool. It's a great answer.
Okay.
I think data is every marketer's favorite tool, but you must have some really fascinating insights that you can gather from the kind of data that you're gathering at that scale.
It's a ton of fun to figure out, not only just like product mix of what people are buying, but how that changes by time of day, how that changes by day of the week. We see drastically different buying patterns on Friday, Saturday, Sunday than we do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And it's cool to kind of figure out like what makes those changes. Why is our average check on Monday, 17 to 20% lower than our average check on a Friday? Like what changes for customers during the week that makes them go, on Monday, I'm going to be really tight with my money, but on Friday, by the time Friday gets around, I'm busting out all the stops. So it's interesting to see those trends start to emerge and go, okay, why is that happening? And then double click down and try to see what you can figure out either internally. Is this maybe something that just happens at Wendy's, or is this something that is, industry wide? And that's one of my favorite parts of my job is when you find a new like nugget or a new wrinkle like that, and you're like, ooh, this is going to be fun to learn why.
Yeah. I feel like data is one of the things that so many of us marketers can really nerd out on, if you will. And I think for many marketers, we were a social science sort of person at one time or another, but of course we all come from so many different paths. And I think that's one of the fun things about coming from a liberal arts education. Most people, as I think we'll learn more today, most people have very different stories about how they got into the job that they're in, or about how they got to Hope and got interested in marketing in the first place. So Travis, thank you so much for sharing a little bit more about your journey from Hope to your current role, and also some of the things that are going on over there at Wendy's right now. I guess one last question for you here. what was your favorite breakfast item back at the Phelps holidays? Do you have one that comes to mind? Were you a cereal guy or were you a fresh omelet guy?
I very rarely had the patience to do fresh omelets. My Phelps treat was the like waffles that you could make in like the little thing where you pour the batter in and then you flip it over, like the waffle maker, and then just loading it up either with
Mm.
the strawberry syrup thing that had the strawberry chunks or peanut butter and maple syrup. That was like my indulgent breakfast go to.
I think I know what I'm going to be having for dinner later tonight, Travis. So thanks for thanks for that memory and for sharing so much. We appreciate it.